I think we just might go to question time, because as clever as Senator Cadell is, I don't think he can do 10 seconds. Senator Farrell.
Thank you, President. I seek leave to make a statement concerning ministerial arrangements.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted. Senator Farrell.
I advise changes to ministerial arrangements. Senator Wong will be absent from question time today and tomorrow on account of ministerial business overseas. In Senator Wong's absence, I will be the acting leader of the government in the Senate, and ministers will represent portfolios at question time in accordance with the letter circulated to the President and party leaders and independent senators.
Thank you, Senator Farrell. We'll move to question time, and Senator Nampijinka-Price.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Senator Gallagher. I refer to an article in The Australian headlined "Warring Indigenous Groups Unite Against Voice." Is the Minister aware of the increasing number of Indigenous Australians who do not support the Albanese Labor government's proposal?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinka-Price. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Nampijinka-Price for the question. I apologise in that I haven't read that article in The Australian, but I am aware that the Uluru Statement from the Heart was agreed to by a broad range of First Nations communities across Australia, and I also accept that there are First Nations Australians like yourself who are opposed to the referendum and opposed to the voice, and we have never pretended otherwise, but we do believe that the vast majority of First Nations Australians, and through them their representative organisations, are supportive of the referendum, are supportive of a constitutionally enshrined voice, and support the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which was agreed to in 2017. The government has listened to the representations from First Nations Australians around the call in the Uluru Statement, which was for constitutional recognition of history of this country, and that recognition is enshrined through a voice to our national parliament. That is what the referendum's about, and on October 14th, every one of us and every Australian who's eligible to vote will be able to cast their vote for or against that proposal. But we are responding to a call from First Nations people to put that referendum to a vote, and we will be supporting that vote. We will be voting yes for that because we believe it will drive better outcomes and it will provide the appropriate recognition through our country's birth certificate of the long and proud history of this country that started before 1770.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Nampijinka-Price, first supplementary.
Thank you. So you haven't read the article. The article states the Tasmanian Aboriginal Centre...
Senator Nampijinka-Price, please resume. Order on my right. Order on my right and my left. Order. 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 Senator Nampijinka-Price, please continue. Start at the beginning and reset the clock.
Thank you, Madam President. The article states the Tasmanian Aboriginal Centre and the Circular Head Aboriginal Corporation are often at loggerheads over Aboriginal identity, voting rights and land access, but are in furious agreement on one issue: the voice is no good. Why does the Anthony Albanese government continue to state this is a proposal supported by Indigenous Australians when it is clearly not the case?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinka-Price. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Thank you, President. The Albanese government is responding to a call from a broad range of First Nations Australians and their organisations, and I have never, and the government has never said—
Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Order. Order. Minister, please continue. Minister, please continue.
Oh, I don't want it. Sorry, I don't think anyone has said that there is 100% agreement on any issue in this country. I don't think anyone has said that. But we are saying that the vast majority of First Nations organisations do support it. They do support it. And I wonder whether there's 100% agreement. I wonder whether there's 100% agreement over there for Peter Dutton's second referendum.
Minister, please, Senator Watt, Senator McAllister, order across the chamber. The start to yesterday's question time was quite disgraceful. It was disorderly and disrespectful. I don't want to see a repeat of that behaviour today, and it's up to every senator in this place to be responsible for your own behaviour. Minister Gallagher, please continue.
Well, I was merely saying I wonder if there's 100% agreement over there of Peter Dutton's idea of a second referendum.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Nampijinka Price, second supplementary. Order.
Minister, the writs are yet to be issued for the referendum, and it's not too late to change course. With the growing number of Indigenous Australians and other Australians deciding to oppose the Albanese Labor government's proposal, why won't the government abandon its proposal, instead put forward something unifying and also take real action on the issues impacting our most marginalised Australians?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinka Price. Order. Minister, please resume your seat. Order across the chamber. Senator McGrath. Before I called the senator for her second supplementary, I reminded the chamber of your behaviour yesterday. And quite frankly, we've started the same way. I'm asking you to reflect on your own behaviour and take a breath before you interject. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, it was more of a speech, I think, than a question, President. The Parliament, in case you didn't notice,
Minister, please resume your seat. Order. Senator Scarr, that does apply to you. Minister.
In case those opposite missed it, this chamber actually passed legislation to set up the referendum. So this kind of idea that you just change it and change the question and all of that is absolute. Well, this chamber and that chamber passed legislation on the referendum, and some of you, including you, Senator Birmingham, voted to support it. So we are not going to change the question because it is enshrined in legislation that has been passed by this parliament. And we look forward to the next 4 weeks of campaigning for a yes vote to drive practical outcomes for First Nations Australians by listening to them, by recognising First Nations in our constitution and delivering better outcomes, because the opposite is that we just accept the status quo, and frankly that's not good enough.
Has expired. Senator Payman, first.
My question is to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. Today, the Australian Bureau of Statistics released the national accounts for the June quarter. These accounts provide the most comprehensive snapshot of the Australian economy at the moment, what's impacting the economy both here and abroad, and how Australians are responding to those impacts. Can the Minister update the Senate on what the national accounts showed and outline how the Albanese government is already implementing policies which will support Australians who are feeling the cost of living pressures the most without making inflation worse?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Payman for her excellent question on the national accounts. And as senators will have seen with the release of this data at 11:30 this morning, in the face of global and domestic pressure, Australia's economy has remained resilient. The national accounts for the June quarter show that the Australian economy grew 0.4% in the quarter and 2.1% through the year. In the 22-23 financial year, the economy grew by 3.4%. Economic growth held up relatively well despite the impact of high interest rates, high but moderating inflation and continuing global
Senator
uncertainty, including the slowdown in China. Capital investment and services export were the main drivers of economic growth in the quarter, and the national accounts also showed that household saving is moderating in expected ways. Australians have continued to pull back on discretionary spending to make room for essentials and to cover mortgage repayments, and are saving less out of their incomes. The housing saving ratio declined to 3.2%. People are also spending less on renovating their homes, which contributed to a decline in dwelling investment in the quarter. President, I know those opposites don't like to talk about the economy, and I can hear their interjections now. They're not interested in that. Their focus is elsewhere. But these results today, in light of some of those pressures that we're seeing across global headwinds, but also some of those domestic challenges around inflation, these results today are pleasing. We have been honest with the Australian community about some of these economic challenges, and that's why it is important to talk about these results when they come out. I'm just going to drown you out. The louder you shout, the louder I shout, and it becomes quite unpleasant, including for those listening along at home, I would say. But these are important results today. It shows that our economic plan is—
thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Order. Order. Senator McGrath, I heard your interjection. It is not game on. It's question time. And I've asked you to listen in respectful silence, and that is what I expect. Senator Payman, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. The national accounts paint a picture of a softening economy and show that more challenges lay ahead. Minister, yesterday the Independent Reserve Bank Board made the decision to keep interest rates on hold at 4.1%, which I'm sure would be welcome news to millions of mortgage holders. But how is the government responding to the challenges that you have outlined, and what further support can Australians expect in coming weeks to build on the targeted cost of living relief that has flowed over October and May budgets?
Order. Order. Minister, please. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Payman, for that question. And we do, of course, acknowledge the decision taken by the Reserve Bank yesterday to keep interest rates on hold, but we understand that that people still remain under pressure with the impact of interest rate increases that started under your watch, would I say, in the quarter where we saw inflation at the highest level. Remember that? You guys have a very, very bad case of selective memory loss.
Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Order. Please continue.
I'm just reminding them, President, of how the highest inflation quarter was under your watch, and that is when interest rates started increasing. So this kind of selective memory loss problem that you all suffer from, this cognitive deficit that you have—
Minister, please resume your seat. I'm just waiting for silence. I've asked for you to be respectful when people are answering the question, and yet there's persistent interjections from a handful of you. I'm asking you to listen in silence. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. That's why the government's cost of living package, our economic plan, does focus on providing assistance for those cost of living pressures, whether it be rent, energy bills, cheaper childcare, cheaper medicines or fee-free TAFE. These are carefully calibrated to meet the challenges of the time.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Payman, second supplementary.
The minister yesterday said that the government was projecting a strong surplus position in the final budget outcome, which will be released later this month. Why is it crucial that we have a solid budget footing so that the government can invest in targeted cost of living relief measures that support Australians at a time that they need it most?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senator Payman, and for your interest in the fact that the government will be delivering the first budget surplus in 15 years. This will be delivered at the time that we have provided targeted cost of living relief to Australians. And it is important to get the budget back on track. Those opposite never really cared about that. They cared a lot about the headline, not about the delivery, and we saw that with the budget. So we are addressing the problems with the budget. We are fixing up terminating measures. We are making investments where we can. We are finding savings where we can. We are getting rid of the waste and rorts and putting the budget in a much better shape so that when we do need to use it, when we do need to provide additional investments that Australian people rely on, that the budget is there to support those investments. And we look forward to delivering that first budget surplus because it is important that our budget is in better nick for the next challenges, or for the challenges that are coming towards us. And we know that it's more than just printing a set of mugs to fundraise
Thank you, Minister. Before I go to Senator Hume, I'll draw to the attention of honourable senators the presence in the gallery of a delegation from PNG. It's the Special Parliamentary Committee on the 2022 election, led by the Honourable Alan Bird MP, who is the committee chair and governor for East Sepik. On behalf of all senators, I wish you a warm welcome to Australia and in particular to the Senate. Senator Hume. Yeah, I did call you. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is also to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, in how many consecutive quarters has Australia's GDP per capita declined?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Hume for the question. And it's not uncommon from quarter to quarter for the per capita measure to move in that direction. In fact, it's gone backwards 1 in every 4 quarters since these records began about 50 years ago, or 48 times out of the last 199 quarters. There's no doubt, though, that in today's numbers, and the Treasurer dealt with this in his press conference earlier today, that we are seeing the impact of higher interest rates, high but moderating inflation, which is welcome, and some of the impacts of that global uncertainty. And we've been clear and upfront with people about those challenges and the impacts that it's having on households, which is why our cost of living package, most of which those opposite opposed, has been so important to support households through this. But at the same time, we have seen a rebound in population growth, which has been driven by the reopening of our economy post-COVID and this very significant return of international students in particular, which is showing up in the services exports numbers, and that's good news, of course, for our education and tourism sectors. While we're seeing international students are returning to more normal levels following the pandemic, we're still not expecting to see net overseas migration catch up to the level forecast by the coalition government prior to the pandemic until the end of the decade. So I think, in short, the answer to the question is we have seen—
Gallagher, please resume your seat. Senator Hume.
Thank you, Madam President. On relevance, I just asked how many quarters consecutively that Australia's GDP per capita has declined.
I believe the Minister is being—
A minute and a half, we haven't got there yet.
Well, she's answered back to the time records were held, but I'm happy to draw your question to the Minister. Minister Gallagher.
Well, I've made the point in the answer to my question that these numbers, it is not uncommon to see these numbers move around quarter to quarter, and in fact we have seen it. We have seen them move quite significantly. Almost a quarter out of all of the quarters reported, we have seen these numbers move around, and you do see quarter of negative per capita growth since these numbers have been recorded.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hume, first supplementary.
Minister, what has productivity changed by in the June quarter, and what do today's national accounts show that it's changed by throughout the last financial year?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Surprised, frankly, that Senator Hume would ask a question about productivity when they oversaw the decade that they were in government, saw the worst productivity growth in the last 60 years. In the last 60 years, the decade that you were in power was the worst productivity growth that we have seen.
Minister, please continue.
I thought you were taking a point of order. The worst productivity results that we've seen, on average, 1.1% per annum
for the decade that you were responsible and a failure to deal with the challenges that are needed to drive productivity growth. We knew you were trying to keep wages low.
Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Senator Birmingham.
Point of order, President.
Senator Birmingham, I'm sorry. I'm just going to call the chamber to order. Senator Watt, please continue. Point
of order, President, on direct relevance. Senator Hume has asked about the productivity changes in the June quarter and over the last year. It's all very well for the minister to talk about the previous decade, but she's happy to claim the budget surplus for the last year. So how about the government takes responsibility for the productivity figures for the last year?
Senator Birmingham, the last part of what you were claiming was a debating point. Minister Farrell.
To the point of order, I think the minister is directly answering the question that she was asked, and I think she should be allowed to continue to answer that question.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Order. The minister has just started her answer. I will listen, and if she's not... Senator Birmingham, if you've called the point of order, I would expect you to listen to my response in silence. Minister, is this another point of order?
In fairness, President, further point of order, President, on your ruling, it is reasonable sometimes to point out that the clock has only elapsed a short period of time. In this occasion, the clock has elapsed 42 out of the 60 seconds. So in fairness, President, if we're going to draw the minister's attention to the question, it needs to happen now if she's to have time to actually answer the question.
Thank you. Senator Farrell.
To the point of order, the minister has been directly answering the question, and every time Senator Birmingham interrupts you, is less time to answer that question.
Thank you, Senator Farrell. I am going to allow the minister to continue, Senator Birmingham, and I will listen carefully to her continued response. Minister.
Thank you. And the point I was making is we do have a productivity challenge in our economy. That's reflected in the national accounts, but it's reflected in the economy that we inherited from those opposite that didn't do the things you needed to do in skills, in reconstruction, in investments in IT, in supporting employees.
Thank you, Minister. The time
we're
for
having
answering.
to fix up your mess.
Order. Order. Senator Hume's second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. That's two questions that the Finance Minister has been unable to answer. Economists universally agree that Labor's industrial relations reforms will further hurt productivity, that decisions such as the rejection of additional Qatar Airways flights hurt competition, and that the Albanese Labor government's policies are making a weakening economy weaker. How much poorer will Australians be, and how many jobs will be lost as Labor's policies drive Australia deeper into a per capita recession?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much for that and for the statement from Senator Hume. We are very confident that our policy, and it doesn't surprise me that we've got criticism of our industrial relations policy, because we know that those opposite wanted to keep wages low.
Order.
They wanted.
Order.
Well, don't you start talking about productivity. What happened
Minister,
under you, Senator
please
Birmingham?
resume your seat. Order. Minister, please continue.
We are addressing the productivity challenge, and we are addressing the wages challenge
Minister
that we
Gallagher,
inherited.
please resume your seat. Senators on my left. Senator Birmingham. Senator Birmingham. Senator Birmingham, I'm calling you to order. I called you twice, Senator Birmingham. I would think as the leader you would say, don't answer me back. I called the Senate to order. I particularly called you to order. I should not have to call twice. I called the Senate to order, and the minute the minister stood, the disorder started again. I am asking senators, particularly those on my left, but not exclusively, to be respectful. Minister Farrell.
Point of order. The leader was quite disrespectful to you just a moment ago. I think, well, it was disrespectful to the president, and you ought to apologise for
Minister
your
Farrell,
comments to.
please resume your seat. Order. Order. Senator McGrath. and Senator Hughes. I'm asking the chamber to be respectful. Senator Farrell, I have dealt with Senator Birmingham. I'm going to call the minister to continue her answer.
Thank you. And just in summing up, Australia will be a much stronger country. It will have a much stronger economy from the policies that we are implementing, whether it's about addressing the productivity challenges or whether it's about addressing the wages issue that we have had in our country for more than a decade. And it's no surprise that those opposite would take every last
Senator
breath in their body to fight against working people
Minister Gallagher,
getting fair treatment.
Senator Hughes, I called you to order, and what did you do? You just kept interjecting. Your interjections are disorderly and they are disrespectful to this chamber. And you as well, Senator McGrath. Minister, please continue. You finished, Senator Waters?
Thanks very much, President. My question is to the Finance Minister and the Minister for Women, Senator Gallagher. Australian women are retiring with significantly less superannuation savings than men. Paying superannuation on paid parental leave was a 2019 Labor election policy. It would cost $200 million each year, less than 10% of the revenue expected to be raised from the government's proposed changes to superannuation tax. You say you're waiting until budget circumstances permit to pay superannuation on PPL, but your proposed super tax changes are a revenue measure that would raise 10 times what is needed to pay super on PPL. Why are you making women wait when you have a proposed revenue source that could fund paying superannuation on paid parental leave?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Waters for the question and acknowledge her long interest in improving women's economic equality in this country, and it's a priority that she and I share. And I think you've seen in the last two budgets how seriously this government is taking or making that priority, and we're addressing it through the income or through the payment system, where we've made some significant changes there. We are also doing it through the work we're doing in women's policy more generally, through our National Strategy for Gender Equality and through our work on the National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children. So, to begin with, I just wanted to put it in that context, and we have been clear, and in fact I heard the Treasurer on the radio this morning reconfirming our commitment to doing super on PPL when the budget allows for that to happen. And I acknowledge that the Greens' position is that we link the PRRT or the high balance super accounts to that change. That's not how the government works. We're not hypothecating, in a sense, where we're making revenue changes to expenditure decisions. These are all matters that come back through government in the normal way, which is, we take a range of decisions on one side of the budget and we take a range of decisions on the other. But it remains a priority for us. That's part of the reason why we are trying to get the budget back into better shape so that we can make these investments. I think it's probably a little bit more than $200 million. I haven't seen the updated costings for it, but why we are trying to make room in the budget for sensible investments like these that will provide a boost to women's economic security, as we know that is good for the economy as well.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Waters, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, in the last financial year, your government gave $9.8 billion worth of subsidies to fossil fuel industries. You're also spending $500 billion on nuclear submarines. Meanwhile, paying superannuation on PPL, which would cost a modest $200 million each year, is subject to budget constraints. Why is spending on fossil fuels and nuclear subs immediate when women have to keep waiting?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Gallagher.
Well, I would argue that we're not waiting when it comes to women, and some of those changes that we've done, including in aged care wage increases, of whom the vast majority of those employees are women, in funding and indexation for community organisations, many of whom work in the women's sector, in the skills guarantee, where we are making targeted commitments about women and access to women's skills and training. But aside from that, I guess the answer is the government has to do a range of things at the same time, and defence and national security is part of that. I think the fossil fuel issue you raise is the diesel fuel rebate, again important for many industries in this country. But you know, the budget is a series of balanced-up decisions. But I do not accept that we are asking women to wait. We are making investments. We're getting the budget in better shape, and when room allows, we will make that. We will deliver on that commitment that has been a long-standing one.
Thank you, Minister. The time
for this government
has expired. Senator Waters, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. The Jobs and Skills Summit almost a year ago said that paying super on PPL was a good idea. 3 months ago, the Women's Economic Equality Task Force recommended it. Your own national conference said this was a priority reform. On the radio this morning, the Treasurer said you do intend to act on this in the future. Can you please give women a date for when you will act on this?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, in a range of those areas, the Jobs and Skills, the Women's Economic Equality Task Force, they came up with a range of priorities, many of which we have delivered on. Not all of them, but many of them we have. So we are remaining true to those processes and the advice that they have given. And no, I can't provide you with a date. These are decisions that the government hasn't taken at this point in time, but they are it remains a priority. Senator McAllister led the work on this some time ago in a previous parliament. She led the work on this and she put it on the national agenda along with a lot of other advocacy organisations. It is in our platform because of that work. And we intend to deliver on it. But no, I can't give you a date, but we remain committed to it, and we remain committed to gender equality in this country, and as part of that, seeing a significant improvement in women's economic security.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ciccone.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Acting Leader and the Minister for Trade and Tourism, Senator Farrell. Today, the Prime Minister invested Australia's Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040 in Jakarta, Indonesia. Could the Minister please update the Senate on this important announcement, including what it means for our relationship with Southeast Asian neighbours and how the strategy supports our government's plans to expand and diversify Australia's trade in the region?
Thank you, Senator Ciccone. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And can I thank Senator Ciccone for his excellent question and his interest in building trading relationships with our good friends in Southeast Asia. And deepening our engagement in Southeast Asia is a priority for the Albanese Labor government. The opportunities in our region are simply incredible. And by 2040, the ASEAN economy is predicted to be the 4th largest single market in the world after the United States, China and India. Trading and investing more in Southeast Asia means more opportunities for Australian businesses to grow, creating more Australian jobs and boosting our economic prosperity. That is why the Prime Minister appointed Mr Nicholas Moore to lead the development of the strategy. His report, launched today, sets out a practical pathway to increase two-way trade and investment with the region. It highlights opportunities for our exporters, investors, tourism businesses, higher education providers, as well as creative and clean economy sectors. Whether it's boosting the energy transformation, high-skilled manufacturing, or supplying world-class produce, Australia has all the goods and services our region needs to power its growth into the decades ahead. The strategy reinforces that trade and investment diversification is key to our shared future prosperity and economic security. We want to forge strong, genuine partnerships with our Southeast Asian neighbours. I know you're not interested in this, but the Labor Party is. And we want more trade, more investments with our... We want more trade, more investments with our regional neighbours, and that's what we will deliver.
Thank you, Senator Farrell. Senator Ciccone, first supplementary.
Thanks a lot for that, President, and thank you, Minister, for that very comprehensive answer. With my first supplementary question, could the Minister please...
Order.
Thank you.
Continue, Senator Ciccone.
Minister, what immediate actions will the government take to implement the recommendations of the strategy and support Australian businesses to engage with Southeast Asia?
Senator Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Ciccone for his fine first supplementary question. Australia's Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040 is a long-term strategy with 75 recommendations. Today, the Prime Minister announced 3 immediate priority initiatives to help Australian businesses realise these opportunities. We've committed $70.2 million for a new Southeast Asian investment deals teams to identify and facilitate Australian investment in our region in areas like infrastructure and the clean economy. We will deliver $19.2 million to the Southeast Asia Business Exchange Program to boost trade by organising Australia's trade missions to the regions, and we've launched a $6 million professional exchange pilot program for young professionals.
Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Ciccone, second supplementary.
Thanks a lot, President. And Minister, could I further ask, how will Australian businesses and workers, particularly workers, benefit from the enormous economic opportunities highlighted in the Southeast Asia Economic Strategy?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thanks Senator Ciccone once again. Well, this strategy sets out key opportunities and highlights success stories of businesses making the most out of trade and investment opportunities in Southeast Asia. For example, in agriculture, Australia is a preferred grain exporter to several growth markets, including Indonesia, Singapore, the Philippines and Vietnam. Last year, our wheat exports to Southeast Asia reached over $6 billion and are a key part of the region's food security. In the clean economy, Philippines investor ACEN has committed over $700 million to build a new solar farm in New South Wales, providing renewable energy and around 700 jobs during its construction. The Albanese Labor government is getting on with the job of diversifying our trade and investment relationships.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, Minister Gallagher. Redlands City Council, situated in the northern suburbs of Brisbane, are facing native title claims over roughly 3,500 council-owned and managed properties, including Wellington Point Reserve, the Cleveland Cemetery, and most of the local parks and playgrounds. The Albanese government and the previous coalition government have funded the Queensland South Native Title Service almost $71 million over a period of 5 years to make claims against the Redland Council and other extensive council areas throughout Queensland. What funding have the Albanese government provided for the respondents, councils and ratepayers to fight these outrageous claims?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I don't have that information to hand. I think, unsurprisingly, I would have to go and see if there's any information that I can provide to Senator Hanson, which I am happy to. And sometimes if people give a heads up, if they've got a question that's that specific, we can prepare so we are able to answer in more detail than I am at the moment, because I accept there's a level of interest from Senator Hanson, and I'm not in a position to answer that today with any information that's been provided to me. But I don't think it's unusual that, and the Commonwealth does provide a range of funding through the NIAA or through the Indigenous Advancement Strategy, and it may be through other arrangements that you refer to in relation to native title, whether it's through the Attorney General's portfolio to support organisations pursuing native title claims. But as to the specifics, I would have to come back to Senator Hanson on that, and I'll see if there's anything I can provide.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Gallagher, I will help you out there. In the 2022-23 financial year, the Attorney-General's Department abolished the native title respondent scheme that provided a piddly $7.1 million, while self-indulgent claimants received almost $71 million to pursue already debt-ridden councils. Why did the Albanese government all but abolish the funding for one and not the other?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. The time has expired. Minister Gallagher.
I'm happy to come back with some information on that. It doesn't actually fall under the portfolio of the Minister for Indigenous Affairs, who I'm representing. That is, as I alluded to in my first answer, a matter for the Attorney-General, for those laughing opposite. And so, you know, I'm not in a position, as I'm not repping that portfolio in this place. I'm happy, and I think this was covered at estimates to some degree. Whether there's any further information I can provide the chamber, I will ask that the Attorney do it, perhaps through Minister Watt.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
Well, you might be able to answer this one. 50% of Australia is already under native title, with a further 10% awaiting determination. Minister, at what point will these native title claims end?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Gallagher.
There's a court case that says it's legal.
Yeah. Well, there are processes and laws in this country that presumably will be followed unless they are changed, and there is no intention on this side to do that. We are looking forward to putting a voice to Parliament so that there are opportunities to listen to First Nations Australians and to ensure that we are driving better outcomes across the country. This is something that I think all of us on this side of the chamber are pleased to campaign for, and we look forward to that positive campaign over the next 4 to 5 weeks, which is responding to First Nations people, is providing recognition in the Constitution, listening about matters that directly affect them, to drive better outcomes for First Nations people across this country.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Brockman.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Senator Watt. Your government has a policy position to ban the live export of sheep. In June 2022, you said, and I quote, "There are some real opportunities to expand sheep processing and expand exports of chilled frozen meat, including sheep. Getting boxed lamb into the Middle East in a bagged carcass market relies heavily on passenger flights out of Perth." Minister, how will your government expand chilled meat exports to the Middle East if you won't approve additional passenger flights from Perth to the Middle East?
Thank you, Senator Brockman. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Brockman. And I'm glad that at last someone from the opposition has asked a question in question time about agriculture. I think February. I think February was the last time anyone in the opposition asked a question about agriculture. Not the National Party. Not the National Party. So well done to the Liberal Party for taking an interest in agriculture. Senator Brockman, I know this is an issue you've got a deep interest in, and as you're probably aware, I met today and yesterday with delegations of sheep producers from Western Australia, which I think probably takes it to well over a dozen times now that I've met with representatives of the sheep industry, the exporter industry and all other parts of the supply chain. And as I've said, from the very first time I met with those representatives about 3 weeks after the election, we will be delivering our election commitment, but we will be doing it in an orderly way based on advice from an independent panel that I appointed to provide advice and provide recommendations on how and over what time frame that transition should occur. And I know, having met with the panel again recently, which no one over there has done, that these are matters that the panel is giving consideration to. So the panel is giving consideration to these very issues. I know.
Order.
So the panel is giving consideration to how this policy should be implemented.
Senator Watt, are you? Yeah, Senator Canavan.
On a point of order, the question was actually about the Minister's statements in regards to the export of carcass meat to the Middle East. He's been going for 90 seconds and not mentioned that at all. I'd ask you to draw him to the question.
Senator Farrell.
Well, to the point of order, I think not only is the minister doing a very good job in the agriculture portfolio, he's precisely answering the question that you.
Senator Farrell. Order. Senator Farrell, you called a point of order in good faith and then you went to a debating point. In relation to your point of order, Senator Canavan, there was a preamble to the question. It did mention banning the live sheep trade, and I will listen to the response from the minister and, if necessary, direct him to the last part of Senator Brockman's question. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. And as I was saying, the matters that Senator Brockman is talking about regarding the potential for more processing on shore and what would be needed to make that a reality, including air transportation, are exactly the issues, among others, that the panel is looking at, and they will be providing recommendations to me. It's interesting that the opposition is taking an interest in the live sheep export industry, given that industry declined by about 70% when the coalition were in power.
Thank you, Minister Watt. The time for answering has expired. Sorry, Senator Brockman, before I call you. Senator Hughes, once again I called you to order and you kept interjecting. I am asking you to reflect on your own behaviour and, when you are called to order, to come to order. Senator Brockman, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. As you noted, there is in fact in the gallery today a delegation from the West Australian agricultural industry already being hurt by your government's decision to end Australia's live sheep trade. Producers are already seeing lower prices. Confidence has plummeted. Sheep producer Charles Wass sold a flock of ewes recently for $20 a head, leaving him a margin of $10. He would normally need $80 to keep his business viable. Minister, why is this government insisting in shutting down this industry?
The question has expired. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Brockman. I have said in every single meeting that I've had with representatives of sheep producers and the whole sheep industry supply chain in Western Australia that this is a policy that the government took to an election not just once but twice. We didn't win the election the first time we took this policy to an election, but we did the second time. And I think it's important that governments keep their promises, and that's what we're doing. What you are asking us to do is to break an election commitment, and we're not going to do that. The question was why we are doing this, and that is why we are doing this. We are implementing an election commitment that we were voted in to deliver, and that's what we're doing. But we are going to do it in an orderly way, in consultation with the industry, and I look forward to receiving the panel's recommendations about how and in what way we should implement this policy.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Brockman, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Minister, considering Premier Cook has now come out against your government's decision to protect Qantas's profits at the expense of Australian farmers wanting to sell their sheep, will you fight for the sheep farmers in Wagen, in Cranbrook, in Kojonup, Katanning, Beverley, Williams, Darkin, or will you turn your back on them again?
Thank you, Senator Brockman. Minister Watt.
Well, as I say, this government takes its election commitment seriously, and that's what we're doing. We're implementing that commitment. Senator Brockman, I assume that you've also been honest with those sheep producers about the fact that the number of live sheep exported from Western Australia fell by 70% when the coalition was in power. I assume you've pointed that out to them. I assume you've pointed out the comments that your Liberal Party Deputy Leader, Susan Ley, has made about this. And I assume that you've pointed out the comments that Senator Henderson has made, whereas I recall she labelled the live sheep export trade as inhumane, which are comments that I've never made about that industry. So I assume that you've presented a balanced opinion on these matters.
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Order on my left. Minister Watt, please continue.
Thank you, Senator Brockman. And as I say, I hope that you've pointed out the comments from Senator Henderson when you were in government, where she said, and I quote, "The sensible path for both sides of the debate is to construct a carefully considered transition to ending the trade permanently. What we both believe is an inevitable and permanent ceasing of all live sheep exports to the Middle East." That's what Senator Henderson said.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson-Young.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Farrell, and fellow South Australian. After a decade of broken promises, the Murray-Darling Basin Plan has left the river and the environment and communities out to dry. The 450 gigalitres promised for the environment and South Australia has not been delivered. The government is now saying 450 gigalitres will be delivered in full by a new December 2027 deadline. What guarantees can the minister give the Senate that the 450 gigalitres will be delivered in full and on time under this new deadline?
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Hanson-Young. And yes, I am a senator from South Australia, and like you, I was bitterly disappointed in the 9 years of the former government's inaction in delivering on the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. And it beggars belief.
Senator Davey.
It beggars belief that, given that the proposal and the agreement of the Commonwealth and the states was to deliver 450 gigalitres of environmental water into South Australia, only in all of those 9 years, only 2 of those gigalitres were provided. It's absolutely
Senator
disgraceful.
Davey, I've called you to order.
It's absolutely disgraceful that on a plan originally devised by Prime Minister Howard.
Senator Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Hanson-Young.
I appreciate the history lesson, but I bring the minister back to the question. What guarantees will the 450 be delivered under your new deadline?
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. I will remind the minister of the question. Minister.
Well, you can have every confidence in that, Senator Hanson-Young, because I sit next to the Minister Plibersek, and I've got the greatest deal of confidence that she will deliver on the things that the former government failed to do. She will deliver what she said she is going to do in full and
Senator
in the time frame.
Senator McDonald.
She will deliver on time and in full on the time frame that she has announced. I have to give credit to the minister, because she found a situation where, shockingly, the previous government did almost nothing to deliver on their commitments to the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. You can
Thank
be
you,
assured.
Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson-Young, first supplementary.
Thank you. How much water will the government secure for South Australia and the Southern Basin before the next election?
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Minister Farrell.
Well, thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Hanson, for her first supplementary question. We will deliver what we have promised to deliver in the recent statements by Minister Plibersek. We know that in the 9 years of the previous government, virtually nothing was delivered. We will start the process, restart the process of what should have been happening bit by bit over that last 9 years.
Senator Davey again, for the third time. Minister Farrell, please continue.
Thank you. Rest assured this, Senator Hanson-Young, that when this government makes a promise, you can laugh,
Thank you,
all
Minister.
of you like.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson-Young, second supplementary.
Thank you. Does the government agree with the Productivity Commission that water buybacks are the most efficient way to return water to the river?
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Minister Farrell.
Thank you. Thank you, President. Thanks, Senator Hanson-Young.
Order on my right. What were you doing? Senator Gallagher. Order. Senator Ruston. Order. Order. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, President. what you can accept from this Labor government is that we will follow through on all of the commitments that...
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Hanson-Young.
Could the minister please be brought to the question? It was very specific.
Thank you. I believe the minister was answering it, but I will draw him to your question. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. We will deliver on all of the undertakings that we have made in the last week or so, following the announcement.
Senator Watt. Please continue, Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Look, what you can understand and what you can believe that this government will do is that we will do the things that the previous government failed to do, and, well, we will deliver on the 450 gigalitres of water
Minister.
that was committed to...
has expired. Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson-Young.
Thank you, President. Could I just ask you to reflect on the answer the minister's given? You did ask him to be relevant to the question. He did not even touch the question, and I ask you to take that on notice.
I will, Senator Hanson-Young, but as you know, I can draw ministers to the question, but I can't. Senator Hanson-Young, don't argue back. I can draw ministers to the question, but how it's answered is up to the minister. And I did draw the minister to the question. Senator White.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. There have been public reports of some employers negotiating enterprise agreements with their workforces, enterprise agreements with decent pay and conditions, and then they engage labour hire workers at lower rates of pay to undermine the whole agreement. How is the Albanese government taking steps to stop the exploitation of labour hire workers and supporting the integrity of the enterprise bargaining system?
Thank you, Senator White. Minister Watt.
Thank you very much, Senator White. Yet another Labor senator who has a proud record in standing up for the interests of working people, something that not one member over there facing us has ever done in their entire working life. Well, sadly, under the current workplace laws in Australia that we inherited from the Coalition...
Order. Order. Minister, please continue.
Sadly, under Australia's current workplace laws designed by the Coalition, too many labour hire workers haven't been treated and aren't treated with the respect that they deserve. The labour hire loophole that the Albanese government is seeking to close is happening where, after an enterprise agreement is approved, but the employer then engages labour hire to undermine the agreed minimum rates in the enterprise agreement. That is something we need to really recognise about this, because we've seen some of the hysterical media coverage of this. We've seen some of the advertising campaigns being run by business groups, which are fundamentally untrue and are based on fiction. The labour hire loophole that we are seeking to close applies where an employer enters an enterprise agreement with their workers and with a union and then decides to undercut that very enterprise agreement that they have signed by bringing in labour hire workers on lower rates and conditions. So it applies where employers, and it's a small number, but it still matters, and employers agree to one thing and then turn around and find a way to knowingly break their commitments under their enterprise agreement. And what we've learned over the last few days is that all of those people sitting opposite want that to continue. We've learned that Senator Hughes wants that loophole to continue. We've learned that every single senator on the other side of the chamber wants that loophole to continue and wants to support those employers who enter an enterprise agreement and then undercut it by bringing in labour hire loopholes. Is it any wonder that wages were stagnant for 10 years under the Coalition government? When they support that kind of activity, we're going to clean it up.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hughes, I have called you to order several times. Don't answer back. Do not answer back. I am directing you to order. I'm directing you to be respectful of this chamber. And
Minister Watt to withdraw the imputations he was making on those that specifically named on this side of the chamber.
Senator Hughes, I don't believe there was an interjection. Senator Hughes, please resume your seat. You've made your point of order. You were disorderly through the entire time the minister was answering the question. That is, Senator Hughes, I'm reminding you that it is your responsibility to sit quietly in this chamber and listen to the minister. I'm going to Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, President. President, on your ruling, Minister Watt specifically, in his response on the record, identified and singled Senator Hughes out for commentary. So, President, you interpreted Senator Hughes's remarks as having been that she was contesting there was some interjection from Minister Watt. It wasn't an interjection. If ministers want to be heard in silence, ministers also ought to show the respect of not provoking across the chamber, particularly in terms of prescribing motivations or others to other senators.
Senator Birmingham, I don't believe that Minister Watt ascribed any behaviours to Senator Hughes. I'm not taking the point of order, Senator Hughes. I will take advice from the clerk. Senator McAllister, is that on a point of order? Senator Watt, what I'm going to do, and Senator Hughes, what I'm going to do is review the tape. And Senator Watt, I invite you at this point, if you did make any remarks that were not unparliamentary, I would invite you to withdraw them.
I'm happy to withdraw. I'd just say that Senator Hughes, was interjecting
Senator
constantly.
Hughes. Order. Senator Hughes, please sit down. Senator Watt, when I ask senators in this place to withdraw, I ask them to withdraw without any other comment.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Senator McAllister.
I wish to raise a further point of order, President. In the exchange just now between yourself and Senator Hughes—
Senator Ruston. Order. Senator McAllister.
This is the point. What's going on here?
Order on my left. Senator McAllister.
It relates to Standing Order 184. Standing Order 184(1) requires that order shall be maintained in the Senate by the President. Guidance to Senate Procedure 23 makes it clear that that is not an instruction to the President, but an instruction to senators to give assistance in upholding normal procedure and behaviour in the Senate. It also indicates in that same standing order—
Order.
1842 also indicates that a senator—
Order.
No, I'm making a point of order.
And you're demonstrating why.
Thank you, Senator McAllister. Order on my left, please.
Indicates that the Senate should be silent so the President may be heard without interruption. During the course of this question time, a number of senators have not complied with that, and I'm raising this because I think it is—
Order. Senator Cash.
The point I—
Senator Cash. Order. And McGrath. Senator McGrath.
I'm bringing this to your attention, President, and more broadly the attention of the chamber, because I think 184 is an important rule that speaks to the good order of this chamber, and I think it is something that people may wish to think about in the way that they are interacting with the President.
Thank you, Senator McAllister. You will note— Order. You will note that I have constantly reminded senators that it is disrespectful to make comments while ministers are on their feet, and interjections across the chamber are disorderly. I've also reminded senators that they are responsible for their behaviour, and all I can do as the President is call for order in this place. Senator Watt, you were answering a question.
I'm finished that answer.
So we're up to first supplementary, so it is Senator White.
Yesterday, the member for Hunter spoke about his former mining colleague Graham, who had been working for a labour hire company for more than 8 years. That was 8 years of his earnings being $30,000 less than his colleagues, and 8 years of less superannuation. How will the Albanese government close the labour hire loophole to ensure a level playing field for Australian businesses?
Thank you, Senator White. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator White, for reminding us of exactly why these reforms are necessary, because it is for workers like Graham, who was raised by the member for Hunter in his speech yesterday, and it would do members of the opposition well to listen to those case studies of people who've been hurt by these laws and why we need to close the labour hire loophole. I've actually met coal miners in Queensland in exactly the same position as Graham, and I heard Senator Green talking about exactly these sorts of people herself this week, because some of us have actually bothered to get out into, whether it be coalfields or other working environments, to listen to the workers who are affected by these labour hire loopholes. And there are certain people in this chamber who like to dress up as coal miners but never actually do anything to stand up for them, and we look forward to their support when this legislation comes to a vote. We are going to close these loopholes that are allowing workers like Graham to be exploited, to be brought in as labour hire and employed for 8 years on lower wages and conditions than the workers they stand alongside who are employed under an enterprise agreement.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator White, second supplementary.
It sounds like if workers and businesses who are doing the right thing are losing out, the only winner from the current labour hire loophole are those businesses who are relying on the loophole to win the race to the bottom. That certainly was my experience. What is the likely... Yeah, it is a question. What is the likely impact on workers and businesses if this loophole is to be closed?
Thank you, Senator White. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator White. Well, if we don't close the loophole, every enterprise agreement rate is up for grabs. That is the simple fact here. We want to see workers get a fair go and businesses given a level playing field to attract staff and earn a decent income. Now, we've talked a lot about the benefits of these changes to workers, but they also have benefits to businesses that are doing the right thing. And I would have thought that people who say they're representing the party of business would want to back in businesses who are doing the right thing and paying workers the amounts they've agreed to pay. But because businesses who are paying fair wages can be undercut at any time by operators who want to gain an advantage by underpaying their workers. Now, I see Senator Scarr interjecting and I see a number of other senators interjecting, but I remind you, businesses paying fair wages can be undercut at any time by operators who want to gain an advantage by underpaying their workers. And if you don't join with Labor and close these loopholes, you are standing with those employers who are doing the wrong thing and undercutting their competitors.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator Farrell.
Thank you, President. On that note, can I request that any further questions be placed on the notice paper?
Thank you, Senator Farrell.